The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the Speaking Masterclass prepared by the OET education team. Whether you're here to find out more about the test or to get tips about improving your speaking skills, there will be something for everyone. Each masterclass covers 3 main sections: the format of the test, tips to help you prepare before the test, and how to succeed on test day. At the end are a few slides about where to go for more support after you've watched the masterclass. The speaking test is profession specific. This means you complete a test which is appropriate for your profession. Regardless of your profession, the format of the speaking test is the same. It is the final test on test day. The first section is warm-up. This is not assessed. It is a chance for you to become familiar with the interlocutor's voice and try to relax. The interlocutor will ask you some general questions during this time. After this, the interlocutor will give you your first roll card and start the preparation time. You can make notes on the roll card and ask the interlocutor to define or pronounce any words on the card you are unfamiliar with. During the role play, the interlocutor will take the part of the patient, family member or carer of the patient, and they will stop you when the 5 minutes is finished. The process is repeated for the second role play. Each role play is assessed against the following 4 linguistic criteria: intelligibility, fluency, appropriateness, and resources of grammar and expression. These can be more clearly understood in these statements. Intelligibility is the impact of your pronunciation, intonation, and accent on your listener's understanding. Fluency is the impact of the speed and smoothness of your speech on your listener's understanding. Appropriateness is the impact of your language, tone, and professionalism on your listener's understanding and comfort. And resources of grammar and expression is the impact of your grammatical accuracy and vocabulary choices on your listener's understanding. As you can see, each statement focuses on the listener, which is important for you to consider. Each role play is also assessed against 5 communication criteria: relationship building, understanding and incorporating the patient's perspective, providing structure, information gathering, and information giving. And these can be more clearly understood from these statements. Relationship building is the impact of your choice of opening to the conversation and demonstration of empathy and respect on your listener's comfort. Understanding and incorporating the patient's perspective is the impact of your involvement of your listener in the conversation on their understanding and comfort. Providing structure is the impact of how you organize the information you provide and introduce new topics for discussion on your listener's understanding. Information gathering is the impact of the type of questions you ask and how you respond to the listener on their understanding. And information giving is the impact of the type of questions you ask and how you respond to your listener on their understanding. Again, as you can see, each statement focuses on the listener, and the masterclass will return to this in the preparation section. Each role play is assessed against the criteria by a minimum of 2 highly trained assessors. Any borderline assessment or assessments that do not match will be assessed by a 3rd independent assessor to ensure the grade you receive is fair and valid. The 4 linguistic criteria are marked out of 6, while the 5 communication criteria are marked out of 3, meaning there is a higher weighting given to your linguistic abilities. As the format slide showed, considering your patient, the listener, is very important. Each role play will be with a different patient who has a different healthcare situation. This means it is essential that you personalize your communication for that role play. You can do this about making choices about what you say and how you say it, and avoid learned phrases that may not be appropriate for that particular situation. Your role card contains important information to help you start making these choices. For example, the setting tells you where the conversation is taking place, which will also tell you whether the situation is an emergency or not. The setting helps you to decide how you will start the conversation. The second section of the card, often called the scenario or background information, gives you essential details to help you complete the role play, such as the condition and purpose of the role play. These details are also on the patient's card, so you don't need to ask them about it, but you may ask more details. For example, in this card, we know the symptoms the child is presenting with, so we do not need to ask, what symptoms does your child have? Instead, we could ask, when did these symptoms start? The third section on your role card is the tasks. These are prompts of information for you to discuss as part of the role play. You do not need to introduce any other content not listed as a task. To achieve a good score in the speaking test, you do not have to complete all of the tasks, but you should not waste time either. During the preparation time, before the role play, it could be helpful to roughly plan how long is needed for each task. In this example, these tasks won't need so much time, and this will help you to keep the conversation moving forward. To help you to consider your listener, it helps you to imagine you are speaking to a real patient rather than completing an English test. Often, adjectives in the background information will help you identify how the patient is feeling. Even if there aren't adjectives, try to imagine how and why the patient might be feeling this way. This will help you make choices about how to start the conversation and the information you provide. Look at the verbs that start each task. These tell you the function of your communication. In this example, 3 of the tasks require you to explain something. It's important to put yourself in the patient or carer's shoes, to think of the information they would appreciate in your explanation rather than just the information you think that it's important to know. Notice also that in this example, there is a task to reassure the patient, but not until task 4. Reassure is an important part of every healthcare professional's role and should not be seen as something that can be covered in one sentence or task. If you feel it's appropriate to reassure before this, then do so. There are many different types of patient, as has already been mentioned. A good way to think about your communication and choice of language and how your choice of language may need to change is to think about one health condition for each of these different types of patient. For example, how would you speak to a patient in an emergency situation when they have pre-existing knowledge of their condition? When it is not the patient, but a family member you are speaking to? If the patient is older or younger? Or if the patient has a high level of emotion about their condition, for example, frustration, anxiety, or upset? To ensure you communicate well with the listener, key points of the marking criteria are worth revisiting. To communicate successfully, you need to understand the patient's perspective, even if you don't agree with it. Validating how the patient is feeling by using empathy will make them more receptive to the rest of the conversation. If you need to explain something, Make sure you do so clearly and simply. Avoid medical terminology if it's inappropriate for the patient's current understanding. While you provide the explanation, make time to check the patient's understanding and allow them to ask questions or for clarification. In the same way, how you listen to the patient will determine how successful your communication is. Make sure you encourage the patient to talk by asking them open questions at points during the role play, and when they are talking, encourage them to continue with things like, right, okay. Try to avoid interrupting them so they feel you believe what they're saying is important and provide you with all of the relevant details. And finally, when they finish talking, provide an appropriate response to show you were listening. This might be to summarize what you understood of what they said or to ask a follow-up question. To summarize, the best ways to prepare for speaking are: practice speaking about a variety of common health conditions for your profession to a variety of patients or family member types. As you practice with a friend or colleague, record yourself on your phone to listen to afterwards to assess your communication and how well you included the listener in your choices. If possible, get feedback on your speaking from someone trained to do so. Make a record of useful phrases, but not one specific to one condition or situation. It will be more useful to have phrases you can apply or adapt to many conditions. To make sure you get the best possible result on test day, here are some final tips for the preparation time in the speaking test. Ask the interlocutor to define or pronounce any words you are unfamiliar with on your roll card. Consider spending a few seconds deciding which tasks need more of the 5 minutes than others, so that you cover as much content as possible. Think about how your patient feels and the best way to speak to them and provide the information to them. Think about changing your language to be appropriate to that patient type or level of urgency. Avoid medical terminology unless the card suggests the patient would be familiar with it. Decide how to start the role play. This will help you feel more confident when the interlocutor invites you to start. During the role play, keep talking for 5 minutes to provide the assessors as much language as possible to assess. The interlocutor will tell you when to stop. Balance how much time you spend talking with how much time you spend listening and responding to the patient. After listening to something the patient says, make sure you respond to them. Ask them a question or summarize your understanding. If the patient tells you they don't understand, it doesn't have to mean your English was incorrect. They may not understand the healthcare condition as the interlocutor is not a healthcare professional. Ask how you can clarify the information and then provide this to them. Finally, remember that OET is not testing your medical knowledge. Provided the information and advice you give is in clear English, it will not matter if it's medically inaccurate. This masterclass on speaking is available on demand, so you can watch it as many times as you like. For further ways to prepare for the speaking test, visit the OET preparation portal for sample tests, tips and strategies. Join us for our twice-monthly Facebook Live question and answer sessions. Ask an OET expert for their advice with your preparation questions. Improve your general speaking skills by enrolling on an OET preparation course. We recommend our premium preparation course providers who have been endorsed by OET for offering high-quality courses to candidates. Contact them directly to discuss your situation and goal. If there is not one local to you, some of them offer online options. Thank you for listening and good luck with your preparation. Prepare now for success later.